AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Doug Hamilton. Doug is the head of AI research and chief data scientist for Nasdaq. Doug, welcome to the show.
Hey, JP. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Doug, let's start with yourself. A background of your journey, how you first got involved in technology, some of the roles you've held along the way, taking us up to where you're currently at, leading all things AI at Nasdaq.
Yeah, absolutely. So the journey I took to technology is kind of longer and winding than many. I actually started off my career in the Air Force in a sort of technology role in that I was a technician working on the equipment that worked on the equipment that worked on the airplane, so fairly far away in a calibration lab. After the Air Force, while in the Air Force, and then afterwards, I pursued a degree in mathematics from University of Illinois. I was fairly certain at the time that I wanted to be a theoretician, so I took a lot of coursework in real analysis, topology, complex numbers, that sort of thing, until I had this wonderful internship where I was working in the astronomy department, studying a star that's kind of in its last phases of life, and found that there was absolutely no earthly application of that knowledge whatsoever, and that I was completely bored and I had no desire to be an academic anymore. So there I was with one semester left in school studying math, trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life now, and fell into a software development role with a company called Fast Enterprises. As a software developer with them, I learned two things. The first was I really liked building stuff. That reminded me that I really enjoyed building highly technical things. But two was I didn't want to be a software developer. There wasn't a lot of room to kind of flex the mathematical muscles that I'd spent developing over the last few years. So I went to grad school at MIT after the software development role, enrolled in the system design and management program, where I studied systems engineering with a focus on operations research. From there, I ended up working at Boeing, standing up an advanced analytics lab within their manufacturing sector, which is kind of cool. Got to watch airplanes roll by me all day while we worked on heavy data problems and figuring out how we could use the notes made by mechanics to make our operations smoother. And after a couple of years of doing that, I landed with Nasdaq, where I've been working in financial services, applying data and AI to make financial markets safer, more transparent, and easier to interact with.
Thank you for that. Yeah, you're right. It's certainly not the traditional approach of computer science into your first role, but nonetheless, great to hear that another good example of career pivots based on knowing what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy, and can often lead to some amazing things. So focusing on Nasdaq, look, everyone's familiar with the brand, but I'm sure there's a lot that people don't know about what you guys do. So I'd love for you to give us some insight into the inside look of the data team as a whole, what you guys are doing with leveraging, machine learning, AI, and how it's impacting the financial markets globally.
Yeah, absolutely. So, usually when I'm having this conversation with people, I always start off by reminding them that, fun as it might be, we actually don't trade on our own exchange. So we're not a trading firm. And that's usually the first myth that I dispel. I think about us in terms of three different areas that we're working on. One is providing insights into data that's coming out of Nasdaq's markets. The second is building tools and technologies that enable financial players as well as other markets to work. So we provide software that powers 47 plus markets around the world. And we also provide software that assists with regulatory technology for many, many large asset managers, bankers, and broker dealers around the world as well. And then finally, the area that we look to have an impact in is kind of ecosystem plays. So these are how we can use AI to differentiate our markets from other people's markets, right? Which is not the easiest thing in the world because markets are kind of a commodity thing, right? You don't really care. If you're a trader, you don't really care where you make the trade so long as you get the best price you possibly can. So as a result, we're looking to see how we can use AI to differentiate our market. I think a great example of how we can use data, how we've used data and AI to really find unique and interesting insights into our market comes from a product we released, one of the first products we released called Trading Insights. Trading Insights is a product that lets particularly high and medium frequency traders understand how much alpha they're losing because of their latency. And here we use AI to provide, and machine learning really, to provide benchmarking for how you are performing compared to your peers, based on your activity and your peers' activity. And that's something that really we couldn't do with just heuristics or rules-based systems by themselves. When it comes to things like the technology that we can provide elsewhere in the world, there what we're really looking at are things like our surveillance program, where we're enhancing our smart systems with artificial intelligence that allows it to search for bad actors in the market more efficiently, find them, and help to keep both markets, banks, brokers, and trading considerably fairer and increasingly free of market manipulative activities. And finally, when we think about our ecosystem plays, here we're really looking at how we can use AI in a variety of ways, whether it's how we can use AI to improve quoting services, how we can use AI to manage our markets more smartly, better, or generally better. And those sorts of things really provide help provide differentiation between this very commodity thing of trading two assets together for the clients of our market, the traders and market makers that allow all the activity to occur.
Great. No, that was really helpful to visualize some examples behind those three areas of the insights, tools, and ecosystems. From your time joining, you entered Nasdaq as a senior data scientist, and you've since advanced up the ranks to now heading up the whole organization. I'd love for you to talk us through that journey, what it was like and how it's evolved from when you first entered the organization, what led to you being able to step up into such senior roles and in such a short period of time. What are the do's and don'ts? What were some of the challenges that you faced along the way?
So we'll start off with kind of the journey. I joined the company, as you mentioned, just over 3 years ago, and the team had been around for about a year. There's a few things that I think occurred that allowed me to slot into that manager role a little more naturally. One would certainly be, I have not just the technology experience, but also some of the experience from the military and from my past life as a software developer as well, that kind of give me a little more, just generally a little more experience working than a lot of the people that I was with. At the same point in time, I think that what we noticed was when we first started as a group, we were largely most of our work revolved around analysis. So this is, we were really spun up to do data onboarding. So you'd get some data as part of our alternative data business, check out a data set, bring it into the market, and or rather test it out, see if there's value there, or alpha that can be found, trading strategies that can be found. And then if so, we'd bring it to market through a product we had at the time called Analytics Hub. Over time, what we realized is that while there's certainly an interesting value prop there, there's an interesting business there, there's a much wider scope that we can affect if we pivot from being an analysis group towards an automation group, and we focus on how we can use modern cognitive services, modern artificial intelligence to automate and scale our businesses. And since at the time, frankly, I was doing a lot of the work on the actual automation portions of how do we automatically extract alpha from the alternative data that we were onboarding, how do we do things like automate various portions of index management. It was kind of a natural fit in that way as well. Challenges, oh man, are there challenges? So first, it's never fun suddenly becoming the boss of your peers. It's always it was an interesting, and I'd say it was rocky transition at first. There's some standard pitfalls along the way. There's always, I feel like anytime something like this happens, there's always somebody who leaves the company because they thought they were going to get the role and didn't, so they leave, and you have to deal with that. And there's also some challenges just moving from a position where you're expected to be the the smartest person in the room, which is really your job as an individual contributor, to really moving into a supporting role where you sit back and let other people shine. And I can tell you, for me, initially, that was a difficult thing to do because I really do love building the technology so much. I'd say the last thing that made it very difficult is my predecessor and I have very different personalities. I'd say the person who had the role before is a much more agreeable person, and being agreeable has many advantages in a lot of ways, and I'm a much more disagreeable person, believe it or not. And I think there's some adjustment there as well. But I'd say, over time, the way that we navigated that transition was by having an increased focus on delivery, making sure we're keeping all of our business partners incredibly happy, and it's kind of successfully leading us towards this vision of away from analysis and towards automation. That's really made for some very exciting things in the works currently.
Well, thank you for talking us through that, and I appreciate the candidness on the challenges. I'm sure anyone who has found themselves in a leadership position will resonate with what you've just said. You talked about the transition from analysis to automation, so I'd love for you to give us some insight into what that's been like. But taking into account what you and I spoke previously, what are you enjoying most about that evolution and overall just the challenges that you face with Nasdaq?
What I'm enjoying most about the evolution is that it feels a lot more cutting edge from the day-to-day working on it. It's a lot more about executing on incredibly high performant models, both in terms of their ability to make predictions, understand the world, and exercise control over the various systems that they're targeted on. So that part of it's super cool, right? We are using kind of the latest and greatest algorithms in almost everything we do. Very oftentimes we have to invent our own models, not totally from scratch, right? But we don't get to use pre-existing architectures for almost anything we do. So that part of it, all super cool. The other part of it that's really cool from a non-technical side is when we look at the businesses that we provide as a company. Nasdaq historically has kind of had a large customer base, obviously with other markets around the world who need software, as well as large institutions in the buy side. And when we start thinking about automation, even light versions of it, what we can start thinking about is how we take some of the services that we currently can only provide to these very large players and provide it to smaller and smaller firms and to the retail investor as well. Or to smaller asset managers as well. Sometimes we refer to this as the march from Wall Street to Main Street as our focus. And the ability to do that through automation is it's something I'm kind of passionate about personally. As far as the challenges that are associated with it, when you're in an analysis group, you can, well, to be frank, you can be a little sloppy in how you code, right? Because everything's kind of one-off. You do some analysis, you put together a presentation, you put together a white paper, and then you move on with your life. And then the next data set comes in, the next analysis target comes in, and you repeat, right? And it's much more of a client or almost internal consulting or service-based role versus as an automation-focused group, where really what you're focused on is software as almost model as a service or software as a service role. So, our standards for software development and model development have had to increase. Our standards for how we deploy and manage deployments have all become more rigorous as well.
You and I spoke previously about, why Nasdaq is such a great place to work, particularly within what you do and playing with data. Obviously, the volume alone is one part, but also the continuous evolution and working with the newest and greatest algorithms. As you're now leading that whole practice, and you came in as an individual contributor, you've moved into a leadership role, and you've now been responsible for growing the team from when it started to what it is now. Can you give us some insights into what it's like to be a member of the team, how you've built out this data team, what it looks like, how you get the maximum impact from them?
That's a really interesting story. And I think in a lot of ways, it's a story about a maturing technology as well, or a maturing technology stack around AI. So when I joined the team, I think we had 2 software engineers who were dedicated to it, our quantitative engineers, and then we had 4 data scientists. And they were on a semi-consolidated team working on kind of this one project that we had at the time. And like I said, it was very analysis focused, and our data and our software team was kind of responsible for bringing data into the environment and writing some of the test scripts, and then we were responsible for the analysis. I think really what's occurred though over the years is two things. Well, three things. One, the team has grown. So instead of being kind of this group of 4 data scientists and 2 software engineers, I believe we're now 6 full-time data scientists, 6 full-time software engineers, a handful of externs, so people who are on a co-op program basically, and right now we also have 6 interns that are on the team as well. So a considerable amount of growth. Also, the other thing that's occurred is that we've had some specialization, right, or better bifurcation between tasks. So it's not just one consolidated team anymore. Now we have a team of data engineers and quantitative engineers who are responsible for things like utilizing the cognitive computing services offered by large technology companies, ensuring those work for certain automation tasks, as well as taking the research models that we build, putting them into production, building and various data engineering tasks. They recently launched a product called was called Market Data in the Cloud. I believe it's now called Nasdaq Cloud Data Services, which is our very first data delivery mechanism that is cloud enabled, or 100% cloud enabled. So they've become much more focused in that area. And what's been nice is then for us, we become much more focused on the data science work, right? On AI research, on making sure that we're using, on making sure that our models are incredibly high performant, that our algorithms are incredibly high performant, et cetera. And then the last thing that's occurred that's kind of cool is within the team, we've seen an increased growth in specialization as well. So just like we've seen this bifurcation between the software engineering and data science team to allow for greater specialization, within the team, we've seen areas of expertise arise around quantitative finance, around natural language processing, around reinforcement learning, et cetera. And while certainly everybody knows a little bit of everything, we have many more experts in specific fields as well that we can lean on as we go out to engage with our internal and external clients to source new projects, source new products, and deliver value.
Excellent. It's changed a lot in the 3 years that you've been there.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about looking ahead? What's in store? What are the big projects? And obviously, the innovation and advancement of AI, data science, particularly in the world of financial services, it's going at a rapid pace, and you guys are part of that. So what are you looking forward to? What gets you excited about everything?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think from a perspective of what Nasdaq is doing, the areas I'm most excited about are a few of our, kind of 3 of our core initiatives. One is our Markets Everywhere initiative. And this is really how do we take our core notion of financial markets and expand it to non-financial assets. And there's a number of reasons why this is a very complicated thing to do and why we need AI in order to do it. But the ability to bring kind of the efficiency, the ruthless price discovery efficiency of modern financial markets to anything from how we buy and sell sneakers to how airlines hedge against price risk in their tickets is something that's kind of cool. The next area that I'm always excited about is Nasdaq. In a lot of ways, is the original fintech company, right? Our heritage is that we started as the world's first electronic exchange, and we have only ever been an electronic exchange, right? Never had a trading floor, at least on the equity side. So this is what we do. We are through and through a fintech firm at our core. And part of that heritage is making sure that we're always pushing the envelope in terms of what a financial market can do, whether that's been historically with always making sure we have the fastest connections possible, the lowest latency trading that you can find, or finding new ways to differentiate our markets from other markets using AI to make them more efficient, simpler to interact with for our clients, or just being able to offer services to our clients that no one else possibly can. And then I think outside of those 2 areas, the area that I think I'm most excited about Nasdaq as a whole is there's a growing interest in AI governance and AI ethics, and our ability to help shape the conversation around AI governance and AI ethics in a way that is helpful, and doesn't just think about what the banks need, or what clients need, or what various groups around the world might need, or technology companies need. But really, the fact that we have this purview over the entire financial ecosystem, I think, gives us a unique view into how we set up the future of AI ethics and governance that other people just don't have.
Amazing. Final question for you, Doug. For anyone listening to this who has the viewpoint of, you got to be interested in finance, you got to have a background in finance to work in finance. As somebody who has come in from a non-traditional background, you're working in it, and you've talked about how you've brought in all these different personalities with different skill sets. What advice or what could you say to those who are potentially considering next career moves and maybe haven't thought about fintech as a space? Can you give us some insight into why it's great and why they should be looking at it as a place to evolve?
I guess I'll start off by saying I don't think I know anybody in financial technology who started off in financial technology, right? The very typical person we find is, they were studying physics, and then one day they decided they were sick of eating ramen, so they wanted to go into finance. Or what I like to joke is, I tried to save the world and got bored, so I end up in finance. But really, you can actually do a lot. Obviously, you can do a lot of great work in the world of financial technology, and just making the way that money moves around the world easier, simpler, and cheaper, right? Which is, it turns out, a very, very important thing if you want to do things like alleviate poverty in the third world, or make sure that disaffected people have access to capital to go do things. Being able to move money around, super important. So what would I recommend people do? One, I'd recommend that people kind of short the myth on finance a little bit. You certainly work very hard, but it's not just a bunch of people thinking about how they can make rich people more money. It's people thinking about how we can actually make the financial system better. For people who are interested in getting in, I'd highly recommend becoming familiar with the terminology of financial markets, with terminology of finance more broadly, to think about how they think about risk, and try to understand the ways that they might think about risk better. Risk management is a huge area where in financial technology, where both quantitative, computational, and software-based acumen can be enormously helpful. The last thing I'll suggest, and this is basically what I did, is I picked up a copy of a book. I think it's called A Primer on Financial Engineering. I read it every day at lunch, and then I started applying to jobs. So there we go. There's three things you can do. One, short the myths about finance, and realize that you can actually do a lot of great work here, in spite of the fact that it is a ton of work. Two, become familiar with the terminology of financial markets and risk management. And then finally, get a book on the subject and start reading, start working your way through, and you'll find your way here.
And good things can come from it. Doug, this has been great. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for talking us through not just your own background, but what's happening at Nasdaq. Incredibly exciting stuff. And we look forward to what you guys are going to continue to accomplish.
Perfect. Thank you very much, JP.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. For more information, contact mark@alldus.com. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.